Okay. Facebook starting. The live has started.
Yeah, I got notification nih.
Check.
Yeah, I got
Nice.
it.
Is that
No,
together?
see if we can hear our voice. That's the most
We can hear,
important.
we can hear.
Yeah, we can hear.
CV is good.
Yes, can hear.
Mute. CV is good.
left her body and hovered above me.
Hello. Morning.
I lost my best friend to 23. I heard the heavens crying above me. The gained an angel, I lost a friend. I felt like dying again and again. I went through hell, stared at death, but I keep fighting with each living breath. I saw no way out from where I stood. Felt like the fire had burned me through. Now you're gone, I'm alone. I guess it's time to get better. Through the pain, I will go alone. If I fall, break my bones, I will scream even louder. 'Cause I'm not dying alone. I lost my best friend.
So, hi everyone. My name is Satish Kumar Armugam. I'm currently working in power generation sector or in other words utility. So, my company is an independent power producer, just like TNB, and we are producing we are generating electricity, and we are selling it to TNB for the national power consumption. And we have power generation assets in Malaysia and as well two assets at Bangladesh, and we have three assets at Egypt. So, yep, that is the background of my career right now. And I'm basically at the HQ where we are supporting and we are managing and making decisions with the power generating assets all over the globe under our company, and we are making decisions to improve and to sustain and to adequately produce power to supply to the nations lah, right? So coming to the second part of the question on the current pandemic challenges that we are facing in my industry is that definitely it is on the manpower disruption lah, right? So as we all know that this COVID-19 pandemic, one of the main precautions that we are told to take, and it is proven that is the only one of the only viable solution right now, it is to quarantine. So when it comes to quarantine, that means we are disrupting the manpower that is much needed in power generation. So as we all know, power generation, although it is moving towards incorporated with AI and everything, remote monitoring system and everything, but we do still need people on site to monitor these machines and to make fast maintenance of anything this work that, so we do still need manpower at there, and that is where the challenges are coming, that if one of those person contract this COVID-19 virus, or any sort of these cases where even close contact with another positive person, we are facing tremendous amount of challenges where we are told to quarantine, told to come up with contingency plans like overnight and make sure that the machines are still running and there are enough manpower to support there on time. So this is where we are facing the challenges mostly. So we are always to be prepared for the worst and always to have backup plans A, B, C. We have 26 alphabets, so plan B, plan C. We have to be prepared for the worst. So this is mainly our challenges at power generation sector. Yep.
All right, thank you, Mr. Satish. Whatever you said, I agree with whatever you said. We have to always be prepared for at least with a plan B, a plan C, if ever plan A failed. So I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Gan.
Sure. Okay, hi, good morning, everyone. So my name is Gan. I'm currently working in EWC Amir. So we are actually a consultancy firm. What we do in our trade is that we design the building M&E services. M&E is mechanical and electrical services for an entire building. So whatever you can see in a building that is non-structure, right? Non-structure, for example, you see the air conditioning system, you see the lighting, fire protection, plumbing system, the water supply, and then the wastewater. These are all part and parcels of what we design in our firm. So we deal a lot with different trades, such as the architects who come out with the building layout, the structural consultants who actually design the building structure, and then with us M&E who bring the building to life with our M&E system, right? So I think some challenges that we face in this COVID period is actually it's really about coordination between the different parties in the project. Because using virtual meeting, I think virtual meeting has been improved and then it's very efficient so far. But sometimes without a personal touch and then without really meeting and then taking the drawing, placing on table and discussing on the
Or demystify saying that okay, what we learn in class, it is not going to be relevant in the industry. It is going to be all different. You are not even going to learn appreciate what you have learned in classrooms when you're starting to work. That is very much of an understatement, right? So what we learn in classroom, the basics of it, it is going to be very much needed when you are working at the industry, right? Because you need to know the logic behind what you're doing. How does it work? Why do I have to do this in such way? So you have to understand the logic behind that. How you're going to understand logic? It is by understanding the concepts, the engineering concepts behind everything that we do. So in my industry, power generation, we need to have strong fundamentals to understand how this whole power plant works, right? So in that sense, we are going to need thermodynamics, heat transfer, all these subjects are going to come very handy in terms of understanding this whole power plant operation. That is one. Second skills that is needed for my industry that I think is very crucial is that decision making and teamwork. So these skills may not be acquired in classrooms, but rather in extracurricular activities where in power generation, if something a mishap happens or something goes wrong, we must be ready to work with the technicians and fellow engineers to quickly come up with contingency plans or quickly make a decision how to manage with that issue, how to control that issue or some difficulty in the operation, and then quickly while it is being managed there, we also have to think of a long-term solution quickly with the management and everything. So this is where decision making skills and team effort is going to be very very relevant and very crucial in my sector. This is what I would say. Basics definitely needed, and also your soft skills will come into action, such as decision makings and teamwork. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gan and Mr. Satish. I think definitely whatever both of you said is truly a essential thing for an engineer, as decision making and critical thinking is a very important for for us as we are in an engineering field. So I would like to move on with the next questions.
Just now, because as a fresh graduate, as a fresh SPM leavers, right? we wouldn't have much of an exposure to how to make the best decision when it comes to tertiary education, right? Because all of us are going to be like very nervous and skeptical about everything, and we will be open to a lot of opinions from everyone. So in my case, why I chose UNITEN is because mainly it is because recommendation from my people that I know lah, right? So they have stated, and which proven to be true, and I appreciate it right now, is that the graduates being produced from University Tenaga Nasional, it is more demanded in Malaysia lah, I would say. I'm not saying we are the only demanded people, but more towards that the local companies would very much prefer to work with UNITEN, and I've seen this in few companies that I've associated previously. So that is one, and it is basically a recommendation from people that I know, my seniors and everyone. That is one. Second is that, of course, the what has done said before, geographical reasons, right? Being very close to where I live, and of course, as a STM leaver, we will try to minimize as much as cost possible, so that we don't burden our parents and everything. So all this factor comes in, and that's how we are able to make the decision now by joining UNITEN. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gun and Mr. Satish. So this is how I joined UNITEN, where after I finished my SPM and I got no choice where to, I have no idea where to join to continue my further studies. So I joined first with my Form 6 studies, and then I felt that it's too hard, and then I can't cope up with. So as I was finding in the internet where I can find any universities and all, so that's where I came up with UNITEN, and there I saw the open day was around the corner, and then I just applied and I got. So it's basically like whatever is meant to be will be. So yeah, so I would like to continue with the next question.
Sure.
What would you look for it if you were in the position to hire a fresh graduate? Mr. Satish, would you like to go first?
Okay, so disclaimer, I'm not at the position to say this yet. Okay, but to answer your question, I think right, what an employer would look for to hire to be able to work for their company, right? It is basically the passion and the mind.
Truly, whatever both of you said is correct, because as we, a fresh graduate who are going for the interview, needs to be prepared with whatever questions and questions that will be asked by the by the manager and employers. So yeah, so I think whatever both of you said is true, and the audiences should take this up onto their account and all. So all right, now I think we have had a lot of information from the two of them. What about a short break to give our speakers a breather? Sit back and watch our video from the IMECI student chapter as we walk down a memory lane of a pre-COVID life. We'll be back sharp at 10:30 a.m. Till then, stay tuned.
Yeah. What do you think, Satish?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Gan. As former chairman of IMAC, we have conducted many resume writing workshops and everything. So and we ourselves have heard from employers firsthand, right, of what they look for in the resume. So as Gan said, and as for me as well, the first impression, it is very very important, because as an employer, the reality is that, right, when they are doing for a job opening, right, they will have hundreds and hundreds of applications flooding through your emails, flooding through your platforms. They have posted this job application, right? So in that pool of hundreds and hundreds of application, and all sort of different kind of form, cover letter, whatnot, right? So they definitely do not have the time to read everything one by one. So they are going to screen through these resumes and see what stands out for me to take a second look at it, because they do not have the luxury of time to view everything one by one, to read everything 100%. They are going to screen, they are going to have a first impression, and they are going to go with the gut feeling. Let's be honest lah, right? So they are going to get, okay, let me try to have a second look at this resume because it is appealing, or it is good to view, or good for for the viewing and everything. So this is where our luck will play lah. So we have to be very very careful in what color, what theme that is the characteristic that you have. Please put that in the resume and try to make it as holistic as possible, right? So yeah, these 2 points I wanted to highlight. On top all of whatever Gan said.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gan and Mr. Satish. I personally think that occupying ourselves with essential informations, skills, and volunteering programs and etc. is very much vital for a company to hire us, because that's what differentiate us with another fresh graduates who are applying for the same job. So yeah. So there's another questions from the audience. Is having a professional engineer useful for mechanical engineering?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I will take this. Okay. Is having professional engineer important, right? The question is it important, right? So, is it important or not? Now, okay. Professional engineer in Malaysia, from what I understand, are actually someone authorized by the board, the engineering board, BEM, for you to actually approve a design and then act as an intermediary between the client and the authority to do a submission. So because at the authority, for example, I'm not sure, the Majlis Pembandaran is not actually someone who actually take a drawing from any random people and just say, okay, you can go and build this building because you submitted the drawing to me. Then a professional engineer becomes the qualified person to actually endorse on a drawing and a design and say that it is safe to be built, right? So is it important or not? So now it comes back to your interest and the industry that you are in, right? So for example, if you're in the construction industry, just like what I'm doing right now, professional engineer is actually a credential that is like actually quite important to you. It brings you to the next level of your career, where you can actually you can say that design is correct, right? But if you don't have that, you will be a assistant qualified person to actually perform a design work. So it will be important for someone who wants to actually pursue your career very, very greatly in this construction industry. But I think for the power generation industry, Satish wise, I'm not really sure whether
we have experienced this previously, like Ebola, but not at this grandiose scale, right? So so this question is a very good and very relevant question at this point. To answer that question, we have to think about the mindset that we are having as a people, as a community, right? So we have to understand, we have to be empathetic on this situation that has been happening on a global scale, that a lot of people are losing job, and a lot of us are sacrificing a lot when it comes to in terms of students lifestyle. They have to work from they have to study from home, they have to engage in all sort of procedures and rules from government policies and universities to study from home, and people are having connectivity issues. So with regard of all of this, and we have to be very optimistic that students are putting much effort needed to sustain this future that has a lot of question marks on how things going to unfold in future, right? So to answer the question, I think it is going to not be very easy for us to change the mindset of employer, because people can easily in a split of second say, oh, you are graduated through mostly from online classes. Oh, you must not be as good as those who have studied well in classroom, as a conventional way. So this mindset is only going to be changed over the years when graduates who have studied in online platforms, and they have to prove themselves that they are as worthy and they are as important as those who have studied in conventional method. And this is going to happen in I think 1 or 2 years, after the employer themselves see, okay, regardless of the method they have used to study during this 4 years time or 3 years time, they are still giving the quality characteristic and quality additional value that I need as an employer. So they do bring, okay, then I have to change my mindset. Okay, this is something I have thought previously wrongly, and they have proven me wrong. So I think it will take some time for employers to change the mindset, and it is going to be tough for the initial the first few batches of students who have studied in online. Yep. What do you think, Gan?
Okay, I think what Satish mentioned is very true. Is on the part where employer may doubt your ability to actually capture the teachings in this university after graduate. So now I think, okay, in the current situation in COVID, okay, time is an essence, right? We are aging every day.
In the university and just wanted to quit, how would you like to emphasize that education is an ultimate ticket to an excellent career and a successful future?
Oh, that's a tough question, so have we ever lost hope during the course of the degree program, right? So lose hope, I think being hopeless is a quite a serious stage in your life. I don't think that has ever happened to me, to really lost hope in learning lah. Of course, I think the teachers have done a good job in trying to convey the lessons to the people, and perhaps I have tried to done my best in trying to absorb all of the learning from these lecturers. So I don't think I was at the stage that I am hopeless now, right? But moving forward, second part is that how important it is, right, to be to have all this learning. So in the industry, everyone is going to say that what you have learned in the university is not relevant to what you're working on, because what you're working on is very specific. It's a very it's not something general like what we learn in degree, because in degree we mainly learn fundamentals instead of a specific application. But the fundamentals is actually the most important thing that we need to actually carry out our work well, because I think just now Satish mentioned how well do you understand the job, right? So how well do you understand the job? How fast can you capture what is needed in a job? Ties back to your fundamentals. So if you have a very strong fundamentals, you know what is the free body diagram, for example. Then moving forward, you would know how to apply statistics in your work very, very well. So I would still think that it's very important. Please don't lose hope when you're in your degree program. Yeah.
Yeah. So agree again. We are on same level at many instances, right? So to answer the question, if I have ever had lost hope during my studies at university, the answer is no lah. But if I was demotivated a bit, or I thought I am facing challenges, yes, that is definitely because of what you have studied. Without learning the fundamentals in the classroom, how are you going to apply, or how are you going to imagine how to apply this thing without having the back knowledge of it? So education is very important for your career, but but if you still not manage to do a very a strong education background, but you can still learn a lot of things while you're working, because learning is a continuous process, it's a lifelong process. So do not worry, do not doubt yourself. Just trust that you are going to persevere through all this, and you're going to always be learning, and there are new things going to come up along the years, right? So you will always be learning, and be confident about that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gan and Mr. Satish, for the motivation. And I hope all the viewers and SPM leaders will take this motivation to strive towards best, to come to the best. So yeah. So there's a second last question. There's another second last questions. Last but not least, does CGPA or 4.0 pointer really matters for us as students to get into the industry or to be a great engineer? Mr.
Gun,
Satish,
the
would you like to
best
go first?
student. No, I think we have to give the best student of UNITEN at that time to Ganla to answer this first.
Okay, is it important or not? Right. Okay, so to board the plane, you need a passport, right? To go overseas, you need a passport. So if you have 4.0 CGPA, I think it is one of the golden passport for you to put in your CV, right, in your resume. But in terms of work-wise, is it really important that you score 4.0 or not? I would say no. 4.0 is not the answer to everything. It's not that you get 4.0, you go to the work, you are senior directly, then you have a huge salary, and then you're so well to be, right? It's the process to actually get that 4.0 that matters, right? So for these young students, my advice is that you should try to get 4.01, perhaps in your foundation program or your first semester degree. You just try to get 4.01. After you get it once, you may fall in love with it, and you may think that, okay, I want to just maintain my current standing. I want to feel good, right? I want to really know what I'm doing every day. And 4.0 is actually something that validates that. It tells me that, okay, I really know what I'm doing every day. And you just try to strive for it all the way until the end. Try your best. I think 4.0 is not something so easy, actually. But suppose if you're determined to go for it, you want a flashing passport, you want to go overseas for your work in the MNC, you should strive for it now. Yeah, but
Of UNITEN, COE, and IMECI would like to thank our speakers for spending their Saturday morning with us despite having a busy schedule. We really appreciate it.
no problem.
Before that, dear UNITEN students, before leaving the live session, please scan this QR code for Scoran purposes. Not forgetting, the next session is brought up to you by the Institution of Civil Engineering right after this. Just hold up and enjoy the session as well. I would like to inform our viewers about our final series tomorrow, the Series 4 of Virtual Engineering Fair that is brought up to you by IEEE and IET about the Science, Technology, Engineering, Maths STEM activity, which will be held on the 18th of July 2021 from 11 a.m. to 12:45 p.m. So do join and experience for a virtual hands-on on the STEM event tomorrow. Thank you all for sparing your time in joining us today. It really means a lot. I'm Rons, and I'm signing off as your moderator for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gun. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Mr.
Have a good
Satish, and thank
day.
you, Gan.
Satish, let's scan for Koran.
I wish. Okay, bye bye. Take care, everyone.
Wah,
Hello.
that's the end lah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Actually, I was watching the whole thing at Facebook.
If you have a mind to upset the status quo with your big ideas for tomorrow's world, then maybe we're just the thing for the genius in you. For starters, every fellow here is brilliant too, hired to rethink how we think and prove that impossible isn't at all. We love their visionary points of view and how their top-tier ideas are helping us to expand what we know and don't know about our
best friend to 23. I heard the heavens crying above me. The gained an angel, I lost a friend. I felt like dying again and again. I went through hell, stared at death, but I keep fighting with each living breath. I saw no way out from where I stood. Felt like the fire had burned me through. Now you're gone, I'm alone. I guess it's time to get better. Through the pain, I will go alone.
A very good afternoon to everyone here today. We are now joined by a civil engineering alumnus of UNITEN, and we will be getting his insights on the topic of civil engineering and also his experience in UNITEN. Hello and welcome, Dr. Gui Changye. To start off, could you tell us a little about your background?
Hi, yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So, well, I went to a very normal school, SMK Sultan Abdul Aziz Shah. So this is in Kajang, I think almost 20 years, I don't know, 10 years ago. Yeah, sorry, 20 years ago. Wow. That is quite a while. Okay, so I entered 2001. Jeez, time flies. Okay, so after that, I joined science stream, you know, being very interested with maths, mathematics, and physics. And then soon after, I joined UNITEN. So did my undergrad degree in civil engineering. And after that, I went on to further my studies in University of Cambridge. So I came back in 2017, and I've been working with GMP Geotechnics ever since. So GMP is the largest geotechnical consultancy firm in Malaysia.
Very nice. So we'll first go into the topic of civil engineering in general. So Dr. Gui, our audience are the recent Form 5 leavers who are jumping to the next stage of education and may be searching for their field of interest, which could be civil engineering. So could you explain to them on what exactly civil engineering is and also its scope and branches?
Right, so like you say, civil engineering is a very big branch, but the term civil engineering was sort of coined anything that is not military related. So everything else would be civil, like a civilian. But that definition doesn't really help much. So let's think about it this way. Civil engineering has everything to do with civilization. Now put yourself to put it into perspective. Okay, right now I imagine that you'll be sitting in a room, and this room is in a building. So you need someone to design the building that you're staying in. So that is the work of civil engineers. The building needs to be seated on something, so the foundation needs to be there. So that's also civil engineers. The geotechnical engineering, to be specific. Then, okay, you can try to zoom out. So you've got the room, you've got a house, you zoom out, right? How can you get to your friend's house? Or how can you get to your classes on a daily basis? You need roads. So roads, that's infrastructure. So that is also part of civil engineering. Okay, then you can keep on moving upwards. So you talk about water supply, water treatment, and then what goes in needs to come out. So you have wastewater treatment as well. So that's environmental engineering. And even further out, where do you get your water from? So you have dams. So those are hydrology and hydrological engineering, also another branch of civil. So I may have left out quite a few branches of civil engineering, but then you see, the whole point about civil engineering is that you want it to be general, very generic. So when you do your civil engineering degree, you're supposed to touch on the surface of quite a few of this. But I would imagine when you say civil engineering, most people will think about structures, because that's the easiest thing to see. You see buildings, right? So that will really be a big part of what you'll be learning. But in short, that's civil engineering.
Okay, and what exactly do civil engineers do at the workplace?
Oh, that one is a tough question. Okay, so before we go into that, maybe I'll just sort of explain the scope, what civil engineering actually does, right? Before we go down to a day-to-day operation wise. So
yeah,
for a new student, when I first got into UNITEN, so I didn't really know what it really means. I've heard of some stuff, right? You design things. So let's start by the definition of what is design. So architectural design is not engineering design. Let's start by that. So for a layperson, design means, oh, I want this building to be this tall. It needs to have that outlook. So all those are architects, you know, where you want to put the window, how big you want the room to be. Those are completely architectural. Our role as civil engineer comes in after that. Once you have fixed the outlook of the building, for example, we talk about building, then someone needs to come and tell you, all right, you want this building, you want it this tall. Okay, so what's supporting you, your furniture and everything like that? So you probably have your slabs, your beams, your columns. Okay, right, so that's good. That's easy to see. But what are the sizes that I need to put? The architect doesn't do that. So that's the civil engineer's job. Okay, so you have this kind of loading, we need to give you the size. So that's exactly what it means. So, you know, for example, if I have a column, it can be this size, very small pen drive size. It can be huge, this You can't actually see it. So it's a tissue box,
tissue box,
and it can
yeah.
even be bigger. Which one actually works? That's where the science comes in. You don't just pick a number out of thin air, right? So sometimes you need to put additional steel, so you calculate that. So that's the sort of design that we do. So on a day-to-day basis, it will really depend on the kind of problem that we're talking about. So my background, I'm doing geotechnical engineering. So that means that it has to do everything that is in the ground, the soil. So people will be familiar about piles, piling that you do. That's where your building sits on pile. That's us. Tunnel, that's us. Slope stability, that's us. So it depends on the nature of the project. But in general, you have some sort of loading that needs to go somewhere safely. How do you cater for it? How do you transfer it? Who is going to take it? Or what is going to take it? How do you translate that into a mathematical equation? Work it out, find the right sizes. So that's all the number crunching, right? So that's all the number crunching done. At the end, giving that number doesn't make any sense at all. So you can't just tell the contractor, I want this, and that. Verbally, it doesn't make sense. So then you need drawings to show people what your numbers actually mean. You also need to write reports. So on a day-to-day basis, this is what we do. Of course, we also do a lot of construction supervision because we are required by law to supervise our design to make sure that it's being constructed to the way and specifications that we intended it to be. So all day long, there'll be some sort of construction problems at site. You need to solve that. So, it's definitely a problem challenging kind of life. Sure. Every day, it's going to be something different.
Okay, so as you mentioned just now, there are many different branches of civil engineering. And well, civil engineers, they essentially work on different types of projects depending on those branches of civil engineering, correct?
Yes.
So based on your experience so far, what has been the most interesting project that you have been involved in?
At the moment, well, we're still involved with the construction of MRT Line 2. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. If you live in KL, you see a lot of it. So they are building this mass rapid transit system. So you got stations, you got tunnels, and we are fortunate enough to be part of that. So we're one of the detailed design consultants for two particular scope. But putting that aside, so my team was looking into design of a circular shaft. Do you know what's a circular shaft? A deep circular shaft?
Not quite.
Okay. So now imagine if you're in the tunnel, right?
Okay.
You're traveling in a tunnel. Suddenly you have an issue. So you need to evacuate. You need to escape from the tunnel. But the tunnel is very deep into the ground. So it's not like you can just open the door and just walk out. So you need some way to get up to the surface, and the easiest way to do it is to have a shaft. So in this particular one, it's called an escape shaft. Now, if you travel down Smart Tunnel, you might have noticed the green color signs with the man exit. So those are emergency exits. You get them maybe every kilometer you've got one. So that's a circular shaft. So they call it circular shaft because it's a cylinder like a Coke can, but it's in the ground. So the one that I was working on is 13.5 meters in diameter. To give you into perspective, that is longer than a 40-seater bus. That is the diameter of it. And that's not the worst. It is very, very, very deep. So we are talking about 35 meter, excavated 35 meters. So again, that will put it at about 12 stories.
Wow.
So 12 stories into the ground. And we are doing it in KL. So Kuala Lumpur, as the name suggests, Lumpur, you have very soft soil, a lot of water. So what happens when you have, let's say, a shaft? Again, I don't know if you can see this on screen. Let's say I've got a cylindrical shaft, right? So it's going to be very deep. So you got a lot of pressure that comes into it, right? So our job as geotechnical engineer is you need to make sure the sizes and reinforcement actually work and it won't collapse. because the deeper you go, the harder you squeeze, and your Coke can is going to crush at some point. That's really what you want to take care of. So that's only one of the many problems that we have. Now imagine if I want to throw this question out to you, because you guys are also civil engineers, right? Okay. If I have an empty Coke can, it's rather light, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And if I put it into the ground, that's okay if it's dry. But if the ground is wet and you have groundwater, what do you think will happen?
It will sooner or later sink.
Not so much of sink. Okay, if you put a Coke can into a sink filled with water, do you think it'll float or do you think it's gonna sink? Empty can of Coke.
I think it will float.
That's right. Exactly. It will float because same like a boat, right? Or a ship.
Light, yeah.
So
Then
you're gonna displace some amount of water and it's gonna float. But here we don't want it to float, unlike a ship.
yeah.
So we need to make sure that everything is held on correctly. You got enough friction to hold it to the sides. That's only in terms of the design. Then that all looks good on paper, but then when you start constructing it, it's very different, right? When you have a circular shaft, you draw it like this. On site, it's not going to be anything like that. So each of the panels are going to be constructed individually, like a column. So we call those secant board piles, overlapping columns. But here, if you have done in Form 5, you've done kemahiran hidung, right? I don't know what you call it. And so it's a class where, you sort of build with your woodwork, you try to build a rack and things like this. On paper, your rack is always straight. Once you saw it, depending on your workmanship, it may not be straight at all, right? So then you come into construction tolerance. How much is it okay? Because you know it's going to happen. It has to happen. Can you imagine you need to drill down 18, 20 stories down, drilling it with a drill. If you just sneeze, your drill bit is going to go everywhere and anywhere. But you can't allow that to happen. Then the question is, how much tolerance can you give? How much tolerance can I design for? Once you've done that exercise, how do you check it on site? How do you make sure that people are constructing it correctly? So, all these are just the challenges that we've gone through. And I'm really happy to say at the end, everything went well. It was successful. So that was a very challenging one. Took quite some time to do, but we got there in the end, safe and sound.
Yeah, glad to hear. It's excellent. And then you've talked just now about MRTs and shafts. So those are among the things that civil engineers build. But just for a broader scope, what else do civil engineers generally build?
Oh, plenty. So in terms of structural, anything that you can see as a building would be part of that. So, you've got skyscrapers. If our tallest building right now that they are building, the PNB building, we have KLCC, KL Tower, tunnels, bridges, drains, highways. Those are also done by civil engineers. Wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plants, even dams done by civil engineering. Of course, there will be many instances where you sort of have to cross over or work very closely with other disciplines. So for example, like dam, hydrology, hydrological, geotechnical, structural, they all have to work together. And that is also the same for most of the other buildings. You work very closely with mechanical and electrical engineering. But just about everything that you can see, and sometimes the thing that you can't see, that's where my field is, that's civil engineering.
Okay, so essentially civilization, right? Anything related to civilization has something to do with civil engineering. Okay,
Yes.
so now we just want to touch a bit on your experience as a civil engineering student in UNITEN. Okay, so first off, going back to that period in your life where you also had to choose a field of interest and also a university to pursue your tertiary studies. Similarly to our audience, which are the current Form 5 leavers, could you tell us a little bit about why you chose civil engineering?
Okay. So
Yeah.
there are two parts to this answer. The first part is simple. It runs in the family. So
Okay.
that one is straight out easy, right? We put that aside. But I was always very keen in how to say, just science and physics in general, how to solve problems, that the problem solving part of it. You see, my father is a civil engineer. He's also a geotechnical engineer. And he used to take me to construction sites, the relatively safe one, not the dangerous one, though you can't do that today, but he did. So
Yeah.
he used to tell me, okay, you see, this is the thing that I'm designing now. And it's nice. You can see the pride in him saying that, I've designed this. So imagine if you're a structural engineer, right? You walk down KL City and you point up to that building, to your parents, to your brothers and sisters, to your friends, or maybe to your children in the future. And you say, my team played a role in that. We designed it together. That's something really, really nice. Just to know that I played a small part in this really amazing thing. So that's one part of it. That's how it was cultivated. But the other thing that intrigued me, when you're doing SPM, the first time you see maths, it's an absolute nightmare. It's probably the most feared topic that you have.
Definitely, yeah.
And I agree, it's really abstract. But engineering is the one that actually makes sense of it, because maths is the tool and engineering is the knowledge that you have using the tool to solve a particular problem. Then it makes sense. Then everything falls into place. So it was really fun to see that whole process in a sense. It's really nice. So I like the problem solving part of it. And so I knew engineering was going to be the path that I was going to take. And whether civil or not, well, that is easy because I've been exposed to a lot of civil engineering problem. So it just builds up from that. And maybe the other thing is that it's not abstract, not so abstract. At least for structural, you can see, you can touch, you can feel. And here's one thing about engineering in general. The solutions are very easy to understand. A little kid can understand that, right? Something is about to fall, prop it up. Something is not strong, and make it stronger. The solution is easy, but putting it into dimensions, that's where you need the technical know-how. That is where you need to learn the actual engineering part of it. The solution is easy. So, my father would always take me to site and he'd tell me, okay, right, you see what happens if you put the steel on this side, what happens if you put this on the other side, why this wouldn't work, why that doesn't work. And it's easy to understand. It's not difficult at all. So it was really nice and it feels natural. So then I just progressed straight on to civil engineering.
Okay, and why did you choose UNITEN out of all the universities to pursue your interest in civil engineering?
Well, you see, back when I was doing it, you had effectively 3 choices. To get into university, either you get STP, you go through STPM, you do matriculation, or you do a foundation. Right? So UNITEN offered the foundation year, which was much faster than STPM. So you save a year like matriculation, right? And UNITEN had a very good track record and it has a very good reputation, especially in terms of the employment rate. So I can't remember, it was in a high 90% So 90% of you would have been employed before you graduate. So of course, that's a huge plus point. And then, of course, I know that UNITEN has very good facilities. If I'm not mistaken, when we were in the first year, we even had PhD students from a different university doing their tests or doing their research in UNITEN, simply because we had the lab facilities to do so. So that's something, something great.
Okay, and just want to touch a little bit on something called the Washington Accord. So UNITEN Civil Engineering Program is accredited by the Washington Accord. It's, could you explain what is the Washington Accord and why is it important, as well as what are the benefits of choosing a civil engineering program that is accredited by this accord?
Okay, very good question. So Washington Accord in simplest terms, it's a benchmark, an international benchmark. So what it means is that someone from the UK or in the US, they'll say your degree is as good as our degree here. And I will recognize your student as having the same level as my student. Why this is important? You talk about mobility, right? Let's say you want to further your studies in a different country. If your degree is not recognized, then it's going to be a problem because they say, I don't know what sort of quality am I getting now. Are you sure that you're up for it? So you have that problem. And also, eventually, if you want to work in a different country, having this is going to be very beneficial. But of course, it's not just limited to Washington Accord. There are multiple international agreements, depending on the group that we are talking about. You have Southeast Asia, there's another one internationally. And you may have certain local regulation that you need to follow, but this is one of the requirements. It has to be recognized.
Okay. And based on your experience in UNITEN, what can the potential students expect from undertaking the civil engineering program in UNITEN in terms of, like you mentioned just now, facilities and maybe about the education quality?
Yeah, so well, facilities, we've already touched on that. That's very good, right? So the lectures, it's very nice. You know, you have very professional lecturers, very good modules that you have. And the facility, not only the lab testing facility, but the building, the campus itself is very pleasing. It's very comfortable. You feel safe. And all in all, you're going to have a very nice time. And if, you know, going back to UNITEN and thinking back on it, it really brings a lot of good memories. I think that it's one of the best time that I had.
Okay. Seeing as you have a bit more time to spare, I'd like to ask you several questions that I think perhaps the current Form 5 leavers they may have at the moment. So first of all, what were the challenges that you faced during your education days as a civil engineering student?
Initially, the first culture shock that you get is that they're going to treat you very differently from high school. Very, very differently. You're no longer spoon-fed. Right? So your lecturer will come in on day one and they may cover the entire chapter within that lecture or within 1 or 2 lectures. It's no longer in weeks or months. It's just full on, you know, full throttle.
Yeah.
And it's really up to you to really understand and absorb as much as you can, ask the right questions. So that was really unique, and it's something very different because, you know, in high school, a lot of people, you know, they go for tuition classes, you get extra help, but once you're in the university, that is it, right? You're on your own. If you don't understand, of course, you can always approach the lecturer, you can approach your tutors, you can ask, but then the initiative is on your part. The onus is on you.
All right.
So that was fairly new to me.
Okay. Moving on after your education days, what about the challenges that you currently face in your work as an established civil engineer?
I would say there's a certain part, right? It's not only technical. So technical is okay. You can always spend time and work on it. At some point, it's going to be all right. But then there's a soft skill part that comes in. How do you work with people? How do you persuade people? You see, as a civil engineer, you don't only work among engineers. You would work with clients, you would work with authorities, you will certainly work with contractors. Now, everyone is going to have a different point of view. It doesn't make them wrong. It's just they are looking at it from a different perspective. So it's up to you to bring your point across professionally. And sometimes when it regards to safety, how can you persuade them? Can you persuade the client to spend the money? They may not be technical people, so you have to be able to simplify your complex technical problems. You don't want to just straight jump into numbers, point this, point that, plus this, divide that, integrate this, differentiate that. No. The client is not going to listen to any of that. So you have to suit it to your audience, depending on what they would want to hear. and sometimes things that they don't want to hear, but you just sort of have to ease it in and try to work with people. That's a very difficult skill. I mean, UNITEN really prepares us well, technically, and also there's a lot of classes talking about this soft skill, but until you actually have to practice it, it's going to be very different. The class and the real world is different.
I see. So there's actually quite a lot of human touch in the civil engineering world, isn't there? It's not all about numbers and technicality.
Oh yeah. Well, you still need to be technically strong, because at the end of the day, you're still the engineer, but there's a big part of it. And if you want to climb up to the management level, you want to get promoted and things like that. So the bosses will want to think, how can I promote you if you cannot represent the company during meetings? So that is very, very important.
Right. And then what are the traits or qualities that are useful in the line of civil engineering from the journey as a student all the way until actually graduating as a civil engineer?
The attitude is the main thing. If you get your attitude right, then whether it's in terms of technical, dealing with people, if you got your attitude right, you got the can-do spirit, you're fine. You're going to be okay. So, there's always going to be problems, and there'll be always going to be problems that you may not be able to resolve then and then. The whole point about a civil engineering degree, or any bachelor degree in general, in my view, is that it prepares you, it gives you the fundamental enough for you to start learning more. Learning doesn't stop when you graduate. Learning doesn't stop even when you have a master's or a PhD, you get a professor. No, learning is a never-ending journey. So you have to keep updating yourself that, when you, as good as UNITEN is getting us ready, if from day one itself, we can do our reinforced concrete design, even calculation by hand, that's really good. But there's a whole lot of other things that cannot necessarily be covered in the lectures itself, and you sort of have to learn as you go, learn as you're on the job. So you have to be able to learn fast, and to do that you need the can-do attitude, because the moment if I put something difficult in front of you and then you say, I surrender, then that's not going to help. Same thing if you meet a person and you want to persuade them to see your view, you want to do it professionally, that's not going to be easy either. Again, the attitude. We are here trying to solve the problem. We're trying to do our best for the client, for safety. So, let's try to work together. So the attitude plays a really, really important part, whether you're a student, whether you're an engineer.
All right. And then, okay, so seeing as we are tailoring this sharing session to the primarily the current Form 5 leavers, I'm sure in their mind right now, they'll be thinking like, well, what are the kind of things or jobs that I will be open to later on after graduating as a civil engineer? So could you just touch a little bit about what are the career prospects? What are they like for the upcoming civil engineers?
So, yeah, during this COVID pandemic issue, right, it's easy to be very bleak and say that, it's going to be very hard for me to find jobs. Well, to a certain extent, that's definitely true now during this pandemic. But trust me, civil engineers, as long as there is a civilization, you'll always be in demand. You always need somebody to design buildings. The population will grow, so you need more buildings, more roads, more water treatment plant, more electricity. You need to build the dams, all that. So you definitely have a job. Don't worry about it, right? It's always nice to watch those zombie apocalypse movies, at the end of the world. And always the doctors are the one that seems to be playing the very important role, right? To keep people alive. And that's good and all. No, hats off to doctor. But once everything settles down, and let's say you want to rebuild your own life, at some point you want to rebuild the civilization, and then civil engineers will lead the way. So in terms of job opportunities, you can be a civil engineer, you can touch, you can design simple structures, foundations. But if you want to specialize, let's say you go for a master's, or you work in a company that specializes in a very specific field or branch, then you can do geotechnical engineering. You can do things that deals with the ground. You can do things that deals with the environment. You can design things that has to do with infrastructure, the highways. So a lot of those, it's very difficult to sort of list it out in the entire list per se. But really, just about everything that you see out there today will require civil engineers' input to varying degrees, of course, but it's always going to be there. That's if you want to join the consultancy or the construction sector. But you can also be interested in teaching, so you can, be a lecturer. But to do that, you tend to need to have your master's or a PhD, though that would be highly recommended in that field. Or you can work in certain research institutes if you're lucky enough. So there's all sorts of different paths that you can go to.
To give a rough picture, what are the type of companies that one could work for in the future after graduating as a civil engineer?
Sorry, I can't hear you. You broke up there, the connection.
Yeah. So what are the types of companies that one could work for in the future after graduating as a civil engineer?
So like what I've mentioned before, so you can work in consultancy. So that's when you're designing stuff. You can work with a contractor where you're building stuff. You can work with a university where you're teaching stuff. So those are the few main ones that you can do. But then again, okay, I have had a lot of friends who are civil engineers. In fact, they've done PhD in civil engineering. At the end of the day, they might opt out and work in the business field, in finance. So they are very keen on getting engineers as well, because engineers are trained to solve problems. So we are losing quite a few good engineers to the finance team as well. So, that's a little bit more unorthodox, but it can happen. So, the whole point of engineering is to train you to solve problems, and that's the biggest benefit.
So you're saying that after graduating as a civil engineer, you can venture out and do other types of things, and companies will still be hiring you?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's the problem-solving skill that is so sought after.
Yeah. Okay. As a civil engineer with experience and good understanding of your craft.
Sorry, you broke up there again. I can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you.
All right. So as a civil engineer with experience and a good understanding of your craft, how important or relevant is civil engineering actually to society and mankind as a whole?
Oh, very, very, very important. So, like we said, civilization, civil engineering, you really need us if you want to develop the country further. We are still a developing country, so there's much more to explore, much more opportunities, and that's where we stand. So if you need something built, a structure or infrastructure, that's us. So you can't take away civil engineering. It's going to be here to stay.
Okay. All right. So lastly, what advice or tips would you give to, because I'm sure in the audience there are some amount of people that have already decided, I want to be a civil engineer. So what kind of advice would you give to this in the audience?
Okay, so now you've decided that you want to be a civil engineer. Great, welcome to the club, join the team. So once you enter the university, now understand that your attitude, like we say, you need to be positive, needs to be good, but understand your number of A's that you've got during your SPM. Okay, that is your ticket to get into a university. Once you're in, everyone will be on a level playing field. It is going to be a whole different ball game altogether, and the emphasis is on having the initiative to understand the problem. what your lecturer or in the textbook can teach you can be very simple. Like I said, engineering solutions tend to be very simple and straightforward, right? 1 + 1 is 2, but you need to be able to understand what happens if I throw 6 + 4 to you. So the engineering problem will change. It's going to be different. And the important part is you have to be able to simplify things into small chunks. And in fact, that is exactly what computer software does, right? You've got a very complicated structure. There's no mathematical equation to solve it. But what you do, you break it down into small sections, whether triangles, squares. Well, I can solve for a cube. So then you can do it that way. So again, it's trying to simplify things. You need to understand your basics needs to be strong from day one. Work hard, fully understand what the lecture is about, because your CGPA, which is the cumulative grade point average, so this is like the number, the grade that you're going to get. So it's no longer up to 100 marks per se. You still have points, but you want to get 4.0 is the highest point that you're going to get, right? So that accumulates. If you do badly initially, it's going to be hard for you to catch up later on. So you want to maintain your grades as far as you can. So again, work hard, have a good attitude, understand that is the most important one, because no problems are going to be exactly the same as those in your textbook. I promise you that.
Dr. Gui, thank you very much for your time and your useful insights that I'm sure will be most beneficial to our audience. With that, we'll wrap up this session. On behalf of UNITEN,
I have a question for Dr. Gui. So
yes, please
go ahead.
As you know, as we know, you have the title doctor, which means you complete your PhD, right?
Yes.
And you just now you shared to us that you further your tertiary education, your postgraduate at UK Cambridge, University of Cambridge, right? So what do you think UNITEN undergraduate prepare yourself to the world class of education?
Very good question. So I'll share a little secret with you. So this one I was discussing with some of the professors when I was there. Right? So I asked them, why did you choose me? Right? There'll be so many applicants around the world. Why did you choose me? So to get into the University of Cambridge as an undergraduate is very difficult because, again, surprisingly, they have a quota system, right? So they want to save it for their local UK students. So the international ones, you know, there are plenty of interviews and entrance exam, but for postgraduate, it's not. It's a totally different system. You probably have 1 or 2 interviews depending on your lecturer, right? So they told me that they will choose from a university. Of course, it has to be accredited, you know, Washington Accord and things like that. That's a given, right? That's a basic requirement. But if you are one of the best students in your batch, and from the interview, they can see that you're able to communicate. That's where your soft skill comes in. And you can show the quality of work. So again, your co-curricular activities is very important here. So if you can show that, then they're willing to take a chance on you, give you the opportunity to do so.
I see. So you mentioned about soft skill, right? So how do you gain your soft skill or brush up your soft skill during your UNITEN time?
Join clubs and societies, right? Like you guys are in ICE, because really that's the only time where you have to start thinking about working with people, trying to get something done when you're organizing something. Of course, you have your friends. That's easy. Yeah, but you're not working to achieve something. Maybe you want to work together to organize a movie. Even then, that's going to be difficult, right? Someone's going to drop out at some point. So when you are in an organization, you're in a club, a society, you interact with a lot of people. You try to listen to other people's view. You learn to voice out your opinion professionally. All of these are soft skills. The more you practice, the more it comes in like a second nature, and you won't have to sort of, you know, fake it, because you can't fake anything. It's gonna show at some point. You just try your best. Nobody's perfect. Everybody can be trained. So I did quite badly. I didn't really join much society in the early years, but later on, I'm fortunate enough to have met up with a group of very good friends, and we joined certain competitions together. we in many ways, we were one of the first few batches that was involved in ICE.
Yeah.
How it came about, and it was great. So soft skill doesn't come in a day or two. It's not technical knowledge that you read this sentence, you read this chapter, and you should know something about it. No, it really has to be practiced. You have to try it. It's like language. You can't read it on your own. You have to practice.
Yeah, that's very true. I think our SPM leader will thank you for your little tips on that. And as you mentioned, by joining club and society, you can brush up your communicating skill with all the strangers, we call it, like the people you haven't know, like lecturer or friends from different discipline. So could you just illustrate us with an example, like what event have you been organized before?
There was this annual event, I think by ICE back then. It's a fairly big one where we got a representative from ICE, Dr. Ui Tek On. He'll come in and give a speech. So then we have all sorts of competitions and things like that. I mean, that's just one point. How you brainstorm what sort of things that you want to do. How do you gain the confidence to call up these people and say, we'd like to invite you over. And then you have to get the permission from the university to do something like that. You have to get the budget. Where do you get the budget? Right? And then you talk about advertising. How do you tell people that this event is happening? It's not good that just this 10 people in the same room knows about it. Somebody else needs to know about it. How do you go about doing that? So there's all sorts of these stages. It's hard for me to say it right now, but once you're in the society, when you're active, not just as a member, right? So you're actively involved in the committees, then you start to see. And in many ways, that's like running a small company on its own or running a small team. When you graduate, when you become an engineer, you're expected to lead a team. It might be a small thing to begin with, but eventually as you go up, you're going to have people looking up to you, people who are going to approach you with problems. How are you going to handle it? How are you going to solve that? In many ways, it's the same because, it's still a business. So money, budget still comes into play. You want to advertise. Of course, for professional bodies, we can't put up advertisement, but, it's a different kind of advertisement. If you do a good job, your client will advertise for you. When we attend meetings, how do you present yourself? How do you persuade others? All of this comes into play, and you have a safe zone in the university to do that. Because what's the worst that can happen, right? You're just a student at the end of the day. So, try to do that. It's all right to make mistakes. In fact, make more of the mistakes as you can while you're a student. Don't make mistakes when you are a practicing engineer, because people can die. Don't do that. Okay, but that's where you learn. You learn in the university. It's a safe environment for you to do so.
Yeah, thank you. That's so cool to hear that. And I think our audience have benefit a lot from your words and experience. And the floor is back to you, Yusuf. Thank you.
All right, Jackie. So yeah, I think we've reached the end of the session for now. Yeah, on behalf of UNITEN's College of Engineering and also UNITEN's Institution of Civil Engineers, thank you for your time and for joining this sharing session on civil engineering. For any other questions, please do contact us and we'll be more than happy to help with any inquiries. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you in the end. Yeah.
If you have a mind to upset the status quo with your big ideas for tomorrow's world, then maybe we're just the thing for the genius in you. For starters, every fellow here is brilliant too, hired to rethink how we think and prove that impossible isn't at all. We love their visionary points of view and how their top-tier ideas are helping us to expand what we know and don't know about our world. Working hand in hand, we're out to better the ways energy works for us, to market our inventive ideas and fast-track a world that takes care of us all. Responsible entrepreneurship that will rub off on you. You'll leave our halls of learning wired not just for sensible science, but sustainable business too. A thinker, a breath of fresh air, a game changer, a global visionaire. Primed to keep progress on its toes, the competition on the run, and our planet clean, safe, and secure. But wait. Forget the future for now and focus first on making the choice that will trigger the full potential of you. Enroll. And then, maybe tomorrow, the next big thing that rocks our world will be you. responsible entrepreneurs.